Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. And welcome to today's webinar from our Build Career webinar series, Conversation Skills for Engineers with Roger Granis as today's presenter. My name is Scott Levine, and I am the membership manager here at the IEEE Computer Society. Each month, we host a webinar on vital business skills that will help you excel at your current job and be helpful at your next job and throughout your career. Topics will be on communication skills, verbal and written, body language, career transition, and interview tips, to name a few. Before we get started, I would like to address some housekeeping items. This webinar is being recorded, and you will receive an email tomorrow, which will include a copy of the slides and this recording. You can ask any questions in the Q&A box you see on your screen. Roger will answer as many questions as he can following the presentation. If possible, please reference the slide your question refers to. As mentioned, joining us today is Roger Granis of the Granis Group, which he formed in 2005. Prior to that, he spent 17 years at Gartner, where he built the Gartner Sales University, which helped grow revenue from 22 million to 850 million. He also helped launch the Gartner popular podcast, Talking Technology. Roger holds a bachelor in speech psychology from Wilmette University and did a postgraduate studies in theater and creative writing at San Francisco State University. Roger also has a personal connection to IEEE, which I'll let him tell that story, which I believe will come up in one of his first few slides. And with that, Roger, thank you for being here today, and the floor is yours.
Scott, thank you so much. Good to see everyone. I know it's nighttime for some, morning for others, afternoon for others. And first of all, let's give a nice online shout out, a thank you to Scott Levine for bringing all the speakers and the programs and the webinars to you. He's a great guy to work with. I appreciate the opportunity to be here again, and thank you, Scott. All right, let's power on here. Welcome to Conversation Skills for Engineers. I grew up in the San Francisco area. Conversations, speaking to people, presenting did not come easily to me. In the first grade, I was one of the two kids called out every week to go to speech therapy. I was very shy and reserved. It took a lot of work to overcome this. My father was an electrical engineer, and he was somewhat introverted as well, but a great guy. And he was a lifetime member of IEEE, and once a month he would go out to San Francisco to the evening. They'd have dinner and a speaker, hey, kind of like this. So IEEE is in my blood. For those of you who have heard me before, I'll make this story very brief, but my dad invented gadgets that went up to connect wires and bring electricity from the substations to houses. And so on vacations to places like Yosemite, the wine country, the Pacific Ocean, he would get out of the car with his telephoto lens and take pictures of telephone poles. So right there, we've got something in common, right? Yes, we do. They're the telephone poles. All right, so what have I done with all this skill? Well, I like to help people like you, technical experts. I love to help you sound better, whether it's presenting, whether you're influencing, whether you're having a conversation. Today, we're going to focus on that conversation. All right, let's find out who you are. And I thank Scott for suggesting we do a couple of poll questions to find out who you are. So Scott's going to launch the first poll. Who are you? Are you a student? Are you a PhD candidate, entry level, team lead, supervisor, manager? Are you a director in the C-suite or in the C-suite? Maybe you're retired. Maybe you're other. Maybe you just want to connect with people today in this tail end of the global pandemic. So Scott's going to let you all answer. And there we go. All righty. And by the way, as you're filling out your answers, I know there's a little bit of lag time here. Please, if I want this to be very workshoppy, consider maybe I'm a college professor in communications. I've got an open door and you've got a question as we're presenting, please just jump in and type your question in the question box. All right, Scott, is the survey done? Let's see, we've got about 12% students, another 7 or 8, so about 20% still studying, very few entry level, about a quarter are team leads, and another 15% higher than that. Some retired, welcome, thanks for coming. And other, please, in the question box, type in what role you have in other. I want to, again, make this very practical and relevant for you. All right, so we've got another poll question. Scott, are we able to move to that? I'd like to find out not just who you are, but what situation or situations you would like to apply our lessons today to. If you're a manager, a leader, do you need to influence employees? Do you need to persuade peers? Or do you need to manage up? I know one of the webinars was managing up. This will dovetail nicely with that content. Maybe you're doing a job search, or you go to a networking event, and I don't know about you, but let's say you're at a convention, it's a coffee hour, it's like, I don't want to talk to people. Well, maybe you'd like some tips on how to do that, or you've got to deliver some bad news, an employee, or maybe you're doing some work with a client, and there was an error, you've got to deal with that. So again, put your answers in. Scott's going to get that tally. You can check 2 boxes if you'd like. So again, all right. So influencing peers, lots of that, more than half, just over half influencing peers. Yeah, it's hard because you don't have authority over them, and you've got to schmooze and make that work. Also influencing leaders came up very high. Networking, really pretty much across the board. Lower score on the influencing employees. You've got that management role there. You can tell them what to do. Hopefully you're doing it in a nice way. All right. Thank you, Scott. That gives us an idea of how we're going to target this content. And by the way, my biggest pet peeve in this seat is wasting people's time. I want you to get high value. So please, if you want me to speed up or slow down, put that in the question box. And as I'm going through this, please apply this to a specific scenario you're thinking of right now. Let's put this to work today. How do you feel about communications? How do you feel about talking to others? I honestly, in some situation today, still feel like this guy on the screen. So this is a universal issue, especially among engineers. So rest easy. Everyone feels this way. You're not alone. All right, let's start with 5 key foundational elements. Key concept 1 is when we're chatting with other people, we're always worried about ourselves. We're thinking, oh, what am I going to say? How do I look? I don't want to look stupid. Am I talking too much? And so forth. Okay, guess what? The other person you're talking to is feeling exactly the same as you. So immediately, step 1 is put the focus on them. The key to a good conversation is it's like a spotlight in a theater. Put the spotlight on the other person. We are making them the hero. That makes them feel good. That makes them open up. It gets your worries out of your head because the focus is on them, not you. Key concept number 2. We want them talking a lot more than us. A good conversationalist is listening 75% of the time. You're only talking 25% of the time. Now, there are times when you're delivering a report or making a presentation, you're going to do most of the talking, of course. But in a conversation, you're meeting somebody at a networking event, you want to make a deeper connection with a peer so that you can sell your idea to them, motivate them to come on board to what you need them to do. You, again, want to make them the hero. Get them talking. Not always easy, but today we're going to learn how to improve your game in that area. Key concept number 3, we want to get people to like us, so we're appealing to their emotions. We want them to trust us. And that's developed by maybe appealing to logic. It's also developed by who you are, your track record, and that gets them to respect you. So we want in our communications, in our conversations, we're putting the spotlight on them. We want to get them to like, trust, and respect us. Okay? All right. Concept number 4. This comes from my life in sales. I went into sales reluctantly, but ended up kind of liking it. I did pretty well. And a lot of the lessons I learned in sales, I'm able to apply to influencing situations. I know a lot of us, when we hear the word, sales, oh, terrible people. No, well, it's got to be done with integrity. The good salespeople we like. It's the ones that talk too much or are unethical that we don't like. But one of the key concepts from sales is that people buy or make decisions, say yes, with the part of their brain that is emotional, and they justify it with logic. So we, especially as engineers, think, well, if we just present our logical case, the other person's going to say yes. Well, we've got to recognize that we've got to bring in this emotional element. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. And then finally, key concept number 5 is there's too much blah, blah out there and not enough aha. So we want to hone our message, and that takes practice and preparation, so that we're delivering nuggets of insight that appeal to logic and emotion. Hey, Scott, I think you might want to go on mute there, buddy. There we go. There we go. That's better. Yeah. So again, key nuggets of insight, information, persuasion, and move away from blah, blah. So it takes practice and preparation. I'm going to frame this next section as the yellow cake principle. Now, my mom recently passed away, and I was reflecting on what a great job she did as a mom. And I remembered a story from when I was 10 years old. Now, my mom, you look at the picture, that's me way back then. Kind of a traditional family back there in the 60s. Some of you weren't here then, but we did have color photographs. And Scott and I were talking beforehand. We listened to vinyl records. This is why we heard music back then. Here's the Eagles. All right, Desperado, you love it. Okay. So I was a disc jockey for a while. I can't help myself. So anyway, mom and the yellow cake principle. My mom was very strict. She had rules. Never talk to strangers. Never give strangers to rides, never give money to strangers, never let strangers in the house. One day when I was 10, I walked in the house. There was a stranger my mom had met at the grocery store. Now, this woman was named Shirley. She was in her 60s, and she was kind of down on her luck. Her husband had just died and wasn't sure what she was going to do with her life now. Was kind of scared. I talked to her, took her into the grocery store, bought her groceries for a month, brought her home. And here was the super cool thing that happened. Yeah, the first part was pretty cool, but the next part was great. Instead of my mom making dinner for Shirley, she honored Shirley by having Shirley bake her favorite family recipe, which was yellow cake. And it was the most delicious yellow cake I've ever tasted. And look at this. Many years later, I still remember the story. So why am I thinking about that story? Because what my mom did, aside from breaking the rules, was the key to communicating and having conversations with other people. So there were 3 steps. These are the 3 steps I want you to remember. There's Shirley. It's connect. You want to make a connection with people. Understand who they are and really listen, and then present. Now, I went in depth on this in the another webinar that I did a while back. You can certainly watch that after this, but it was called Influence You Can Bank On. A lot of the concepts there are being used here, but I'm going to go much deeper into how to apply this to conversations. But these are the 3 keys to connecting and having conversations with other people. You've got to start by making a connection. Really get into, as we say, rapport, establish rapport. And you can watch people, and once you've made that connection, they sort of relax. There's a little tension. They've got their guard up a little bit, but you make that connection, establish rapport, and then you proceed with other business that you need to take care of. With some people, you've got to do it fast. With others, it's got to be slow. It might even take multiple meetings over time because we're building that trust. We want to get them to like us. Again, this has got to be genuine and sincere. All righty. So, by the way, we're speaking of the yellow cake recipe, CUP, connect, understand, present. Okay. One of the biggest mistakes I see in all communications, sales, influencing, but conversations. The biggest mistake is we come into a conversation and we, or maybe the other person, starts talking and we're delivering information from us to them or them to us. We haven't established any sort of connection. We don't understand what's important to them. And we're just doing that blah, 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 blah. Stop, stop, stop. That's really not what we want to do. We want to connect first. So here's the recipe. Spend some time, some cups, making that connection cake up front. Spend a lot of time with the spotlight on the other person, understanding them, asking questions, and then presenting some ideas that will bring them around to what you want them to do. Again, it's got to be genuine, highly ethical, no funny business. Here's a kind of a formula for what it takes to make that connection, especially if you're dealing quickly over the phone or sending somebody an email message. We've got to get their attention quickly. So you've got about 3 seconds to get that person's attention. When they come into talking to you, you tap them on the shoulder at a networking event, you call them, you send an email, they're thinking about themselves and their issues, their problems, their challenges. So you've got to say something. You've got to drop a word in quickly up front early on to get them to go, what? And that buys you another 10 seconds to get them to read the rest of the email or take your phone call, or you bumped into them in the hallway. And that buys you another 30 seconds. So you've got to get their attention quickly. Here are a number of ways you can do that. Let's imagine, well, I'm going to go through 3 or 4 scenarios in a minute to where you would apply these different techniques. Again, this is right up front. You're trying to get their attention. Here's an example. So my wife, years ago, we lived in San Francisco. She was looking for a new job. She didn't like what she was doing. She was working for a trade show company in sales. Both were bad fits. Okay, she left. And she wanted to get back to the hotel business. And I said, we were having a chat just like you and I are. I said, Sandy, we need you to call the 5 or 6 hotels. But we want to say something quickly on the phone that's going to get the attention of the general manager that you're calling. And again, you could use this in an email subject line or meeting somebody at a networking event. So we took a look at my wife's background. She had worked at the Waldorf Hotel in New York City. Whoa! Most people around the world have heard of the Waldorf Hotel. So instead of my wife calling and saying something like, oh, hi, my name is Sandy Granis, and I moved to San Francisco a year ago, and gosh, I don't know, got any job openings, something like that. What we want to do is get the word Waldorf Astoria out of her mouth quickly to get the manager to go, what? That's all we're trying to do. And so she said, hey, Steve, I used to work at the Waldorf Astoria, and I'm now in San Francisco, wondering if we could chat for a few minutes. Okay, so he later said, oh, that was a good technique. You really got my attention. So it works. So here are some other ways to make that connection. You could say hi. You could mention a referral. Hey, Julie Johnson suggested I call. Something in common. Again, we're trying to get attention. So Julie Johnson is somebody Steve knows. Woo! What's this all about? Maybe something in common. Maybe you went to the same college, like the Ohio State University. Give them a compliment. Ask about them. You're at a conference. How is the conference going for you? Maybe your boss or your peer is overwhelmed. Hey, I know you're working with this project. I've got a little bandwidth available. I'm happy to help out in this way or that way. Would you like to chat for a couple minutes? Again, you're getting their attention and then making an offer to talk more. Maybe ask their opinion. I'm working on a project. I'd love your input on this. Are you trying to make a relationship with a peer you need to work with better? Woo, ask their opinion. That makes them feel good. Maybe you make an observation. Maybe, again, you're at coffee, at a conference. Woo, a lot of traffic out there. Or nice day out. Again, you're just breaking the ice a little bit. Okay, some other ways on the screen there. All right, let's see how to put this concept of dropping something early, saying something early to connect with, let's say, a job hunt. So in the subject line, you want to network with Steve, you mention somebody in common. In the subject line, maybe mention the college, Purdue, what have you. Or the Cleveland Airport Terminal. That would be a project that you're working on together. Again, you're getting them to open the email and read it. Maybe in the body of the email, you say something like this: "Hi, Bob. Julie Johnson suggested I contact you." Or, "Bob, I'm a recent EE from Purdue." Or, "Dear Bob, I understand you are bidding on the Cleveland Airport Terminal." Okay? Again, subject line gets them to open the email. The opening line gets them to read more. Again, it's that 3 seconds gets you 10 seconds. Okay? Okay. All right. Yeah, I'm just reading some of the input here. See if there are any questions. Okay, student, senior engineer, professor. Great, welcome. Technical services manager, thank you. All right, let's apply this to a networking event. Now, I know we're doing our networking virtually now, but very soon, in fact, I'll be speaking live about 20% of the time over the next 6 months. So meetings are coming back. So let's say you go to a networking event. And again, I'm just like you, like, I don't want to meet new people. Well, here's one way you could do it. Set a goal. All right, I'm going to meet 5 new people. So that takes a little pressure off because you don't have to be perfect every time. And it gives you a bar to set, a goal, a challenge to achieve. Have a mental outline. Think ahead of what you're going to say to these people, and then you're going to use the technique of connecting. Okay, here are 3 examples. "Hi, I'm Stephanie from Purdue. How about yourself?" Or maybe something funny. "Hey, this is a networking event, so I guess we should start networking, right?" Break the ice with a little bit of humor. All right, let's say you've got to influence your peers. A lot of you said that. Or you've got to manage up. Again, plan ahead. Think about the peer or the leader and think through what is important to him or her, to them. Again, they're thinking about themselves and their problems. So we want to drop something in early that relates to pressure they're feeling, what's important to them, their priorities, their goals. Again, that would help us appeal to logic and emotions. Just think about what's important to them and what stress, goals, challenges they might be thinking about so that you can be someone that potentially would help relieve that pressure. So we're sending an email to Brenda about a project that you knew about was overwhelming her. "Hey, Brenda, you mentioned the XYZ project is behind schedule and is stressful. If you're open to it," again, that's a soft way to not push. "If you're open to it, I've got an idea on how we might shift resources or reallocate resources and move the timeline up at least 3 weeks." How could Brenda say no to that? You're relieving pressure. You've got an idea. You're appealing to logic and emotion, and it's going to help Brenda. Okay, you're trying to influence a peer. This will get you a conversation. Maybe you've got to deliver some bad news. In these cases, we don't want to be indirect We don't want to, as we say, sugarcoat it, meaning, for those of you not from the U.S., meaning we don't want to be nice and not, we don't want to make the problem sound small. We want to be clear, concise, and direct. Hi, Steve. We need to talk about what just happened. Okay, so again, this step is to get their attention, to make a connection. And if you watch the other recording of Influence You Can Bank On, it goes into much more detail about the things directly related to this. All right, now we've made the connection. Oh, I'm sorry. It talks about concepts related to how other ways to connect with people. So now we want to move to the second step, which is understand. But first, we want a smooth transition. So far, we've made the connection, and now we want to start asking them questions. And the questions would be, so we want their permission to ask questions first. So we don't want to say, hey, Bob, I've got an idea. By the way, when is this thing due? How much are you going to spend? We want to get them to open up, and we do that by having some sort of verbal transition. It shows that we respect their time, and it gets them to clear their minds and focus on this period of time where we will be asking questions. So a transition might sound like this. Is this a good time to talk? It'll take about 5 minutes. Or can we schedule a quick 30 minutes to go over the highlights? It might be something simple as, hey, any interest, like meaning any interest in talking further. Then you might say, I've got a couple questions first. So again, we want them to say, all right, I'm going to clear my mind. I'm giving them permission, giving you permission to ask me questions. That gets me to relax and focus on you. It's that simple. Make sense? So we want to avoid them feeling interrogated, asking questions that might make them guarded and feel like, hey, whoa, you're getting into my stuff here. This is none of your business. We want to get them to say, yeah, okay, we're in this together. I'm now receptive to you asking me questions. So imagine we've sent an email or talked to somebody. We've asked them for permission, and they said, too busy right now. Let's schedule something in 2 days. Let's schedule something on Wednesday. All right. So now that we come back to this second meeting, okay, we had the first meeting to get the appointment. Now we want to have the real meeting where we're going to understand. Okay, this is key. Now, a few days have passed, couple days. Now, are they thinking about you when you walk in the room or you meet for coffee? No, they've forgotten about you and what you said. So you've got to remind them. You've got to put some oil on that conversation. So we don't want to go into meeting 2 and just start asking questions. Now, you've been thinking about the meeting. You've been planning it. To you, it makes perfect sense. Oh, time to ask questions. But they don't remember that that's what the plan is, or may have forgotten. So you want to, this is a really good skill. We call it a verbal recap. Okay? We want to say things. We're summarizing what happened before so that they can remember and recommit to you. So it would say something like this at the beginning of that second meeting. Hey, thanks for meeting. We met last week, and thanks for meeting. And now you're going to recap your previous conversation. When we bumped into each other in the hall last week, I mentioned I have an idea that might help relieve some stress and earlier. And we said we'd talk for about a half an hour. Is that good? Great. Yeah, that's still good. I got a half an hour. I blocked the calendar. Great. Now you're going to move into new information. So you've summarized what happened before. Now you're going to lead them into new uncharted waters. But I'm telling you, this recap is super important. You can use that in a lot of situations because it avoids this abruptness. You want to like glue the pieces of the conversation together. So then you want to give an agenda of what you're going to talk about. Hey, I'd like to propose what we do in this half an hour together. I want to make sure I understand your vision and the status of the project. I've got a couple of questions to help clarify and understand, make sure I'm on target. And then I'm going to share my ideas based on what you said. How does that sound? Yeah, good, good. Anything else? Nope, I think that's good. All right. Now, will you be this formal in every conversation? Of course not. But we want to get those building blocks in place. Recapping, which warms them up, and then leading them into new charts. And it might be as simple as, hey, we met last week. Sounded like you were receptive to some ideas. Great. Hey, I got a couple questions. And I know we said we'd meet for half an hour. Still good? Yeah, great. Let's roll. Boom. So it can be shorter. But you want to do that, again, to avoid that abruptness. We want to lead them into this new territory. And then you go through the meeting. All right. So let's now talk about the meeting and the types of questions you'll ask in this conversation. We're going to go a little more in depth in this than we did in the influence you can bank on and apply it to conversations. The key concept is this: when you're interested in the other person, asking questions, listening, really paying attention and enjoying learning what they have to say, they feel that we are interesting. I like Scott. He's a great conversationalist. And you know why? He lets me do most of the talking. All right? So we want to get people talking about themselves. So this is the way we want to frame our questions. We call it the funnel. We want to start broad and open-ended. What's important to you about this? Tell me about your vision for the new airport terminal. Tell me about your vision for this new networking architecture. Okay? Broad, open-ended questions. We don't want to start at the bottom of the funnel, which are closed, specific questions like, what time does this have? What is the deadline for this? What's the budget? What's going wrong with this? It feels like an attorney, a barrister, attacking you with specific questions. The goal is to get them talking. Let's say you're buying a car. A good salesperson would say, what are you looking for in a car? What's important to you? What type of features would make this traveling simple for you? Then they would ask questions around how many people will typically drive? Is gas mileage important to you? How do you feel about colors? Do you have children? Again, so the reason we want to start broad and open-ended is it will help the listener, the other person will guide you to what's important to them. And they'll almost pave the path to the solution that's going to work. Then you can target your answers, your solution and the way you present it specifically to them. So open-ended questions, again, what's important to you about? Tell me about this. Share with me. Oh, the other reason open-ended questions are so important, because it gets people to start talking about their dreams, their hopes, their fears. That's the emotional stuff. The other things down at the bottom, those tend to be more tactical, logic-based. So to stir the emotions and to get that emotional engagement, to get them envisioning a solution that they want, that will motivate them to say yes, we want to get them talking about that vision. That's where the emotions are. Okay, more specifics about types of questions. Here are 3 categories of questions. Powerful questions. Again, these would be open-ended questions, but they're very thought-provoking. They invite reflection. They stimulate curiosity and creativity. They often begin with what or how. So some examples. What has been your experience in handling something like this in the past? So let's say you've got an employee or a peer that made a mistake or is taking too long to do something, and they're struggling with the solution on how to fix the problem. Rather than you coming up with the idea, let them come up with it. And a question like this would help them think through, well, how have I handled this in the past? You're honoring them like my mom did Shirley. You're not baking the cake for them. You're you're letting them use their brain, which builds their confidence and helps them come up with a solution that will ultimately help both of you. Here's another one. If somebody asked you for advice, what would be the first thing you'd tell them? Or envision a point in time when this issue has been resolved. What did we do? Again, these are powerful questions that honor the person, get them thinking outside the box. It's a great types of questions to ask employees too. They will love you as a leader when you do that. Probing questions. So we're not just talking about specific details. They dig much deeper. They get a person to talk about their personal opinions and feelings. They also promote critical thinking. These are those open-ended questions we talked about before. But again, we want to go deeper. So we don't want to just take their first answer and say, okay, great, I've got some ideas on how to fix this. We want to get them to open up, go deeper. There's a book called The 5 Whys, W-H-Y-S. And it's the basic concept is don't settle for the first response, dig deeper. Now tell me more about that. How is that important? How might that impact things for the long term? So again, deeper questions, go to level 5, because that's really the root cause. There's emotion there, and gives people a sense of relief that you've drawn this out of them. So what else? Can you give me an example? How did you feel about that? What would happen if? So again, that's a question that rather than give them the answer, maybe have them come up with, ooh, gosh, if I do that, we'll be over budget and 5 weeks late. What would happen if? And it might be painting a positive. What would happen if we did add more resources to this? How would that play out? Now, will this work with every person? No. If you're going to the boss or you're trying to get a seat at the leadership table, they might want things all the way thought through. They're looking at you for answers, not all this, this deep exploration. But you might gather that information from other people that you then would feed into your answer, your proposal to the leader. How are we doing? Any questions, Scott? Making sense? Scott, first, hopefully, are you out there? Tommy, can you hear me? I think we're still alive here. Yes.
Yeah, I can hear you, Roger. I was muted. We're doing good. Your video did freeze, but we do have another poll question coming up. So I think while they're answering that poll question a little bit, we'll have you see if you can fix your video.
Okay, great. You got it. Yeah, we're almost there. I'm on slide 42. Polls coming up at 46. All right. Finally, clarifying questions. These are simple questions about facts, and I know engineers are really good at that. Things like what resources will be available, what role did you play in the scenario you described, what's the timeline, what's the budget, what are the specifications. You all are really good at that, so we won't spend a lot of time on that. Let's just step back for a second, and you might be thinking, all right, so I'm going to connect, I'm going to do a transition, and I'm going to understand. Let's just think, all right, how do I make this all work? What am I doing with all this? Again, we want to make the other person, put the other person in the spotlight. We want to get them talking. Let's just talk about the art of conversation for a minute. I'm thinking about my Uncle Don. My dad had 2 brothers, 1 twin, and the oldest brother was Uncle Don. Now, Uncle Don, oh my gosh, he was really good at this. Again, high integrity. He was in the financial markets, financial services business, and had a great early career, went off with a partner who was not trustworthy. He stepped away, basically lost everything. And then because he was so trustworthy and had built great relationships early on in his career, he started in his 50s all over again and did really well because he built trust and he treated people well, high integrity, and really skilled at all this stuff we're talking about. What did he do? When he listened, he looked you right in the eye. He really focused. He kept the spotlight on the other person. Now, here's something we haven't talked about. He followed their line of thought. So let's say we're talking about painting the house a new color, and you ask your partner, what color do you want? And he or she says, oh, I like this Pueblo color. And then you shift gears and you're going to talk about, oh, look, where are we going to go on vacation this year? No, maybe the partner spouse wants to talk more about the color and their vision. So you let them guide the You're leading the conversation, but you're letting them dictate where the subject goes. You're not going to have them talk a little bit about topic A and then jump in with your thoughts or change the topic. So they dig deeper. They ask follow-up questions. They don't just listen with their eyes, with their ears and their heart. They really empathize. And then this is another key in the art of conversation. They encourage them with things like eye contact, smiling. My Uncle Don was with the eyebrows. Oh, God. Oh, interesting. Again, he was really doing it legitimate, but we can take these body language skills and start incorporating them into our own conversational skills. All right. Things we want to avoid. We don't want to upstage them and say, oh, that's nothing. One time I did this. Conversational whiplash. That's where you abruptly change topics and don't give any indication that we're going to talk about this other topic now. Talking too much is another mistake, and interrupting. So Scott's going to bring up the next poll. We're going to talk about listening inhibitors, things that are not good listening skills. So think through one or two things that you are most guilty of. And it might be anticipating what the other person will say, planning what you're going to say, finishing sentences. Maybe you're distracted by other issues. Maybe you're bored, you're checking the phone, maybe you can't hear. So check two boxes. And Scott, I'm going to see what I can do about fixing the video. I'm not sure, short of
Roger, do you have a way to pause your camera?
Yes, I can. Yeah, let's see if I can do that. Well, I can unplug and replug my camera. Let's see if that works. I can also have you advance the slides, potentially, right?
Yeah, I can advance them for you. I wouldn't turn your camera completely off. I would just see if you can try to, if you have ability to pause it and then unpause it, that should, if that does the trick, awesome. And it might not be on your end. It might be a on 20, our provider network thing. So.
Okay. Any luck moving the slides?
I think you're back.
Good suggestion. So let's look at inhibitors real fast. Got like 15 minutes or so. Yeah, anticipating what the other person will say. Half of us, another 50%. Planning what we're going to say. Right. Yep. Distracted by other issues. Right. So again, these are common issues. You are not alone. Listening is really hard. And if you fix that, conversations not only get better, but big problems in the world get fixed. We start listening to each other. Okay. Oops. Let's go there. All right. When we're listening, we want to confirm for understanding. We want to listen, hear, understand, and then reflect back. So what I'm hearing is A, B, and C is a problem. And then the other person will nod, or they'll say, no, that's not quite it. It's more this. Then you recap again. And when they give you the nod, you know you're on target. People want to be heard and understood. So reflecting back is key. They say that there's a study done that waiters and waitresses who repeat the order back to confirm for understanding get higher tips. I think it's something like 20% more tips because it makes the people feel heard and understood. It also avoids problems by delivering the wrong dish. This is a picture of a prison not far from my house. I don't know if any of you have been inside prison, either as a long-term guest or as a visitor. I attended as a visitor a few times, and a neighbor of mine teaches creative writing there. This is a hardcore correctional facility, murder, rape, heavy gang activity, drugs. But my neighbor teaches writing to about 20 of the inmates. And these folks who were in, a lot of them honestly were super young, bad upbringing, were on drugs. Should they be excused? Of course not. But the odds were stacked against them. And these people have volunteered to be in a writing class. So already it's the kind of the cream of the crop of the population. Anyway, the point of this is a couple times a year, I've gone in and you go through the gates, and the first time I was really nervous. But here are 20 of these convicts sitting directly across from me in the same room. There may be 10 of us guests, and they get up and do these readings. They put on plays. So I saw Hamilton behind bars. And then they have a question and answer. So the inmates are sitting directly in front of us, 20 of them staring at us. We're staring at them, and we're asking them questions. They're asking us questions. And here's the part I want to emphasize. When we're telling them about their reading or their performance, they are riveted. I mean, you couldn't hear a pin drop. They've never had a cell phone. So they're not checking for texts. They're not distracted. They're starved for attention, and we are giving it to them. So whenever I think about, I need to listen better, I think about those guys and what they looked like when they were listening to me. So that's an image that, maybe you want to take away. Or think about somebody who's been a really good listener, like my Uncle Don. Maybe you've got a relative, a friend. Emulate what they do. Listening is really important. All right. How might you apply questions in a couple of scenarios in a job hunt? You're asking the person that is interviewing you, they say, hey, do you have any questions? Sure. If you were to give advice to your younger self the day you started working here, what would it be? Wow, that's a pretty good question. Makes you look good. How do you feel when this happens? Or, now clarifying, this is bottom of the funnel, what would the start date be? Just as I said those, didn't you feel kind of a little emotional engagement, your brain connect more when I asked that first question versus just that bottom of the funnel question? Maybe you're at a networking event. If you could do anything you wanted, what would you do? How did you decide to be this? What is your timeline for that? Do you see the difference? Start big and they go smaller. So think about adding some of those powerful questions into your game. Maybe you've got to influence your boss or peers. If you could wave the magic wand and have this issue resolved quickly, what would the solution be? Probing question. How would you use your time if this project were completed 2 months early? All right, you're talking to a peer. We talked to Brenda early, remember? You were proposing, you help her with an idea on how to reallocate resources. So now this middle question that I just asked, what would you do with 2 extra months? Woo! She's going to start thinking about taking a vacation, getting home on time. These are emotional connectors. She's going to start feeling some relief in her, in her veins. That's what I'm talking about when I say engaging the emotions and so forth. We have one more example, delivering bad news. If you were in my shoes, what would you do? What was your thinking process in this situation? Again, getting them to say, hey, I screwed up. This is how I might do it next time. And then getting them to buy into the solution because they're coming up with it. If you had a do-over, what would your timeline be for completing this, and so forth? So we've talked about connecting, we've talked about understanding. Let's move finally toward presenting solutions, presenting ideas, pitching your concept, again, in the context of a conversation. If you want to look at how to present formally, you go to the webinar that's recorded and available in Scott's library called, I think it's Present with Impact, something like that. So we want to have a transition before moving to the present phase, which would be summarize what we've talked about, confirming, and then propose. So the example might be, so the objective would be to this, and you mentioned that. Is that right? Yes. So based on everything we've talked about, here's the idea. Let me share this with you. Now we're into presenting. We want to have a targeted message. Targeted message. I'm going to skip this funny story about me getting engaged to somebody that didn't quite work out. Scott's laughing. Maybe you don't want to hear that one. I'll give you the short version. All right, here it is real quickly. So we've all had relationships that maybe were good, maybe not so good. Mine was previous fiance, not so good. When we start meeting in person, you can ask me what happened, but I don't want to talk disparagingly about this other person. And I had some flaws as well. Anyway, after breaking up with her, I met somebody else. Like 3 weeks later, I fell in love. I told my mom, she goes, "You're on the rebound. You're crazy. This is insane. Go see a counselor. Don't get married." And I said, and I needed one thing, one targeted piece of information. And I said, "What is it? What will connect with her, my mom's emotions?" And we're big Boy Scout people. My dad's an Eagle Scout. I'm an Eagle Scout. My son's an Eagle Scout. And I said to my mom, "Mom, her brother is an Eagle Scout." She said, "Oh my God, it's wonderful." So everything's great. We just had our 35th wedding anniversary, and I won my mom over. Okay, here's one of my bandmates in high school, Neil Sean of Journey. Short story there. His dad had a music store, and to fix my clarinet, he would close all the keys, all the pads, and look for leaks. So he needed to find the leaking pad. So he blew cigar smoke down the clarinet, and wherever it came out the pads, those were the pads that had to be replaced. And the clarinet smelled like a cigar for about 3 weeks. But the point is, you have to have a presentation that is airtight. I suggest, if you don't know DISC, D-I-S-C, dominance, influence, steadiness, conscientiousness, that you do watch the video, Influence You Can Bank On, all free through IEEE. It'll go into much more depth. The point of this is there are 4 different communication styles. Each one wants to receive information in a different way. Real quickly, as a summary, the dominance folks want bullet points and bottom line. Steadiness folks are kind, gentle souls. They're soft-spoken. They care about relationships and people. And the conscientiousness folks do like facts and details. Not to generalize, but in general, engineers would fall into that category. Not all of them, but so the key lesson here is think about the type of person that you're having the conversation with, and shape, slant, structure your information when you're presenting in the style that they want, that they're most receptive to hearing. Okay? The key lesson here is you want to pay particular attention to the diagonal opposite corner of you. I am an influencer. My dad was a conscientious person. So I was, "Hey, Dad, we're going to mow the lawn. I'm going to do this section. I'm going to carve my initials with the mower." And he goes, "No, you're going to go in a straight line, back and forth, up and down." I'm like, "Oh, this is going to be fun." So you see the difference? If I want to influence somebody like my dad, I've got to say, "All right, here's the plan for mowing the lawn," and so forth. All right, you get the idea. Watch the other video for details. Here's an example for each of those styles. Let's say we're selling them a house. We want to wrap things up. For a dominance person, we're going to say, "I've got 2 questions for you, and I need a quick signature." The influencers will say something like, "Hey, we got some quick paperwork, and it's going to be party time. When's the housewarming?" The kind folks, will slow our voice down and say, "We will be with you every step of the way." And they want harmony. The accuracy folks, they want lots of details, so be sure to give them a lot of details. All right. Some other important concepts about structuring your message when you're meeting with a peer, a leader, an employee, what have you. Again, this might be in a less casual, where you're presenting a major plan, you're presenting, maybe you're answering questions in a job interview. So more formal, more at stake, less casual hallway talk. Some key things to think about as you're structuring your content. Have a memorable concept. A memorable concept. Operation Overlord was D-Day. Drive sober or get pulled over. Recruit, retain, record. So somebody, let's say you're in a job interview, or a peer says, how are you going to accomplish this? Well, it's three key things. Recruit, retain, record. I'm going to recruit somebody else. We're going to retain the resources we have through these programs. And then we're going to record how we did this. So next time, it won't be so labor intensive, or we'll be more efficient. So memorable concept. So my son is doing this around the country bike ride where he's raising funds to raise awareness to bring an end to distracted driving. I said, well, what are your three key points? And he played around with them. And together we came up with look, listen, live. Look, listen, live. There's power in threes. So again, come up with a concept. When you're presenting a solution to a problem, describe the problem. And you would have gotten to learn more about this in the understand phase. Recap the problem, propose your solution, and then describe the value. This is where you can appeal to emotion. The value, not just in terms of time, money, but also relief, celebration, praise, a raise, what have you. So structure things in threes, incorporate stories. I just told a couple of stories. Stories are the most effective form of human communication. So drop a story in. Hey, the time we did this, we actually dropped we reduced the delivery time by a month. And I'm saying in this case, we can do it by 2 weeks. And then paint a vision of a brighter tomorrow. That's that value. Hey, once this is in place, life will be good again. A couple other key things, and then we'll go to questions. Bluff, B-L-U-F. If you've got little time or you want to summarize at the beginning of the conversation, tell the bottom line up front. This program will save us X%. And now let's go to the details. Don't use the word but. So let's say my neighbor just painted his house, which he did, and he says, what do you think of the color? I really like it, but, oh, no, I really like it, and gosh, I love the trim color also. So using the word but negates everything you said before. Hey, I love you, but. So just get that word out of there. Use the word and instead. And summary slide, if you want to have one slide to get a screenshot of, this would be it. Bottom line up front is a quick summary. Structure your approach using three things: incorporating stories, painting a picture of a brighter tomorrow. And it's not just happiness, but it could also be removing pain, removing stress. People are twice as motivated by eliminating problems as they are achieving something new. So you could frame it both ways or one or the other. And then structure your message to match the person. Get a lot of information. Happy to go to questions. Oh, one quick thing. So I mentioned my mom, God rest her soul, the yellow cake principle. As I was going, if you've lost a loved one, and she had a wonderful life, it was her time, left nothing on the mat, on the basketball court. But I was going through the photo albums, and I came across this picture of my 25th birthday and a cake she made. And that doesn't look like a very good cake. So we both laughed our heads off. And so I was thinking, you know what? Maybe she didn't keep Shirley's recipe, and she forgot how to make that yellow cake. Anyway, happy to do questions. And if you've got questions for me, please send me an email also. But we've got a little time. Happy to stay on for a few minutes and answer questions. Hopefully, this was helpful. Again, I know this is a lot of information. Typically in a workshop, we'll give a concept, give you time to work on it, talk about it, and move on. So this was kind of an introduction. I hope you can take away a couple of things you can put to work right now.
All right, great, Roger. We do have a few questions. I can read them to you, and we can go from there.
Sounds great.
All right. So I'm going to sort of throw two questions at you at once. They both relate to slide key concept 2 about 75% listening and 20% talking. So one person didn't catch all of that, so they would like you to review that, and then the question related to that is, if the other party also takes the position of 75% listening, should we go with it, go defensive, or try to flip the situation around?
Great question. Love them both. All right, so let's cover the first one first, which really sets the spirit of the suggestion. The point is, we want to honor the other person, put them in the spotlight, and that means they should be doing 75% of the talking. Now, in the situation, in the second question, where maybe somebody went to the same class and they're letting you talk, or they're guarded, they don't trust you yet, or they're introverts, aren't comfortable yet. All of those things are true. Then you need to prime the pump a little bit and say, hey, maybe ask them a question. Oh, what are you getting out of? Let's say we're at a conference. We've just walked out of the keynote speaker. He talked about new safety techniques for computers. And you walk out, you're at the coffee, and you said to yourself, I'm going to talk to 5 people, and you filling up coffee, somebody's getting cream next to you, and you say something like, how was the session for you? And they say, oh, it was good. And then you say, well, gosh, now you've got to prime the pump. So you're going to do some more talking and say something like, what resonated with me was when he talked about using wireless or blah, blah, blah. Did that hit a nerve with you? Yeah, no. Okay, now you maybe have to do it again. Or maybe they're giving you the signal that, I'm just not in the mood right now. I get it. But the techniques you can use to get them going are sharing something from you, then going back. And the more you reveal something personal, private, you're going to go to a deeper, one level down. They're going to start feeling, okay, he's opened up, shared, he's not perfect. I'm willing to share something too. So you've got to ratchet down. And that can sometimes take, months, even years, to develop that level of depth. But again, to get them talking, throw something in, ask other questions. And again, the goal is to ultimately get them to open up. Hopefully that helps. Or if you really think they went to the same class, you say, hey, did you go to the same class I did? You know about the 25%? Listen, talking.
That's a really good tip, Roger. The next question: if they have bad hearing and they're in a noisy environment, sort of like there's a lot of background noise or a lot of echo, or they're at a cocktail hour, is there any advice they can do to where they can, improve what they're hearing and listening in the conversation?
Right. Great question. So what I usually do is say something like, I call it a conversational header, which would be saying something like, gosh, I really want to hear what you're saying. It's kind of noisy in here. Would you mind if we just stepped over to the corner? And then you just go to a quieter spot. But saying something like, instead of saying, I can't hear you, or pardon me over and over, or ending it, compliment them, say, I want to hear more about this. And it's a little bit noisy. Could we step over here, or, step up here? And or say, I want to learn more about this, and it's a little bit crazy at the moment, and maybe you've got to get to something. How about we schedule a phone call or a Zoom or a meeting next week? Could we get out our calendars, or let's text? So move or reschedule, but start with a compliment. You don't want the person to feel that you're not interested, because what are we doing all the time as people? We're worried we're not interesting. We don't know what we're talking about, right? I mean, that happens. So we want them not to feel that way. So by saying something like, "This is awesome. I love when you said this. We're like blah blah." I'm repeating myself. I'm sorry. So schedule, move aside. Hopefully that helps.
All right, great suggestion. Next question. This relates to slide that I'm about to push to the audience.
Okay, you're gonna move it. Oh, there you go. Okay.
Slide 31 on what we see, Roger, and it's 27 noted on your count. They said they tried this, but it didn't work, and they didn't get a reply. Is there something they can do as a follow-up, or is it sort of is this sort of a one and done situation?
Is this the one that says job hunt email at the top?
Correct.
Okay. So thank you. Thanks for all these questions. So, and you might want to type in another. So what did not work? Like, you sent one email using a subject line with something attention getting, and then asked for a meeting or something. I'm going to go with that. That's the question. If it's different than that, please type it in and Scott will monitor. So yeah, there's another principle. I don't know if it comes from marketing, advertising. I think it takes 5 outbound, I think they call it touches, 5 touches. So 5 attempts to even get into somebody's consciousness. So if this person you're reaching out to is what you would consider a high value person to network with, then it's worth contacting this person multiple times. And that could be, let's say, 2 emails, could be a voicemail message. You could write a handwritten note. All gentle. You never want to say, "Hey, how come you're not calling back?" Or, "Did you get my email?" So what's happening in life? Do I answer every email I get? I don't. We're overwhelmed with emails. So it might be your email went to spam. It might be they were overwhelmed that day. It could be a personal issue where somebody died or they had a health issue. And so maybe they're on vacation. They came back to 3 times, 5 times the normal volume of emails and just, "Hey, something's got to give. I couldn't respond." So again, that rule of 5. I'd also, having not seen the email, again, if you want, send me the email, roger@granusgroup.com. Send me a question. We'll chat offline. Happy to do that. It might be something in the wording. I don't know. So another concept that I get from the sales world is, let's say you want to network. Don't just ask one person and then the next person and then the next person, because we don't like rejection, and that if you get rejected from the first person or they don't respond, our confidence, our motivation goes down, if we're honest. It's true for me. So what I do is I say, all right, I'm going to make a list of 100 associations or 100 people, and just send out 5 outreaches at a time. So when I know there may be 100 people out there, I'm like, I don't need to hear from everybody. I don't care. And if I send out 5 in a day, in a morning, I always hear from at least 2. And that feels pretty good. And that gives you some confidence to send out the next 5. And that way, if this one didn't respond, who cares? But the other concept is stack ranking them, A, B, C, D, E. Top. If it's 100, high to low, so that you might treat the top 10% differently by being more persistent, contacting them multiple times. Maybe if it's Julie Johnson who referred you, maybe you contact Julie and say, you know, I tried reaching Stephanie 3 times, not hearing. Would you mind giving her a call, putting in a good word for me? Again, if that's your top priority, you want to think about different ways to get through. Always gentle and nice. But again, if you want to talk in detail, please send me an email.
Yeah, those were some good. That was some good advice. She did have some follow-up questions, but I think it'd be best Roger, I can just send you her follow-up questions, and you two can connect offline if you want. We can keep
that sounds great.
Keep going to other questions.
Great.
If you're a speaker and you realize the audience is not quite interested in the topic or essentially not paying attention, what should they do?
Right. So my immediate thought is, don't assume they're not paying attention. I've learned the hard way that seeing audience members look out the window, checking their phone, looking at their watch, which is actually their Apple, they're actually checking email. I, in my head as a speaker, think, oh gosh, I'm terrible. I'm boring. They're not paying attention. And then some of these people come up afterwards and go, God, that was really good. I'm like, dude, you were looking out the window. And they say, oh, that's just it's the way I process information. So don't assume they're not paying attention. Some other techniques for checking in with the audience would be giving them an activity or doing a check-in. Hey, I've been talking for about 15 minutes. Let's do a quick check-in. You know, I want to make sure our time together is high value and that I'm making really good use of your time. A little feedback. Am I going into too much depth? Are we on target? Or do you have questions? So interspersing those breaks, those deliberate check-ins, will help you gauge where the audience is. So in this presentation today, I have no feedback. I see Scott. I hear a painter sanding the wall, but I'm like, gosh, I hope these people are getting something. That's why I've been asking, or I did a little break with Scott. Hey, is this on target or not? I'm trying to monitor the chat also. I know with Zoom, I'm monitoring the chat myself a lot. So don't assume they're bored or not paying attention or interested. Do some check-ins. You could plant questions and answers as you go. So that's setting up, again, another formal way of doing a break. The key, though, of course, is preparation. And again, you could watch that video. I think it's Present with Impact, or Presentation Skills for Engineers, one of those, where I go into much more in-depth on this. But preparation is key. Knowing what the audience needs, what is important to them, and then shaping your message to directly target that will help go a long way toward making sure they're going to pay attention, giving you the confidence to know that even if they look bored, I know this content is key, and also shaping it using those 3 things I mentioned. 3 key points: interjecting stories, and then painting that vision of a brighter tomorrow. I think there's some more tools in that other webinar. And you've got, I tell you what, man, you've got to put in the time to prepare, because I hate wasting people's time. So that extra preparation, going over this thing 2 or 3 times is really important. And using those tools to shape the content in a way that's going to be engaging. This is great.
Excellent. Roger. All right. What tip do you give? What tip would you give for engineers for like team building and engaging their teammates if they're a leader and they're leading a team of a handful of engineers.
Yep. A couple of tactical examples would be, I would do this a DISC, DISC, do the DISC profile. You could certainly have me do it. I think there are free resources online where you could have this DISC where you understand the different communication styles and go through an activity to do that. Pharmaceutical just had me do that recently up in Boston. So that's one specific exercise. There are other team building exercises. What I would do is Google, in fact, send me an email, roger@granitsgroup.com. I have a list of team building exercises I did for engineers at GE a couple of years ago. So I've got some ideas. Just others top of the head. Some of the popular, these would be like icebreaker team building activities where you get people to loosen up and open up. Two truths and a lie, where each person submits privately to you on a sheet of paper their name, which you won't share, but two things that are true about them. Swam the English Channel, went to space, was valedictorian of my class. And then the group has to guess who it is. I'm sorry, in that case, you would have the person stand up, give the two truths and a lie, and then the audience would have to guess which one is the case. And what I did for another company was they all submitted their via email two truths and a lie. I put their picture up on a PowerPoint and the three statements, and then the audience, the team, had to guess which one was not true. Another way, a variation on a theme, is people submit answers to three questions, like favorite book, favorite movie, favorite something, and then you read those, and then the group has to guess who submitted them. A couple of ideas. I think I've got a couple more. Again, roger@granitsgroup.com. Happy to send you that sheet that I put together.
Excellent. Good. Those are always fun activities.
And again, and
Google, people, go ahead, Roger.
I'm sorry. I was just going to Google, just do team building icebreakers, and you'll find some.
Yeah. We did have one or two people email about the previous videos Roger has done. We'll include a link to that in the email that you'll get tomorrow with the slides and the recording of this presentation. And Roger, I think we'll do one last question and then we can wrap up. What changes have you seen in this work from home environment regarding contact and presenting, sort of like when you're seeking out new contacts?
Right. So, boy, the world is different. So let me see if I understand the question. It sounds like maybe there are two parts, but part one is in this work at home environment, how do we reach out and connect with people, say networking? Am I interpreting that right, or did I shift?
Yeah, I think that's a good interpretation of it.
Right. So, yeah, what I'm finding is I'm an optimist, and I'm finding people I think this has created a lot of opportunity. People are starved to connect. I am finding out even introverts, diehard introverts, not all, but a lot, are starving for human connection. And I didn't realize as humans, how much we need face-to-face live interaction. So people have been, my experience is people have been very receptive to talking to me. So in terms of networking, finding new opportunities for myself, I'm booked more this year than last year. And one of the reasons is partly because of we're starved for engagement, but two, people at smaller chapter associations who would not previously fly me out to do a talk like this, they can do it anytime, and I can be anywhere. So I think there's a lot of positives. In terms of, so that's receptivity. I think in terms of skills, the technique to get them to say yes, I'm finding that the email, the phone calls are working equally well, pre-COVID, during COVID. And the actual conversations, even though as a speaker, I'm president of the New England chapter of the National Speakers Association, even though every week we have a professional come on and talk to us, much like I'm talking to you. They talk to us about speaking, and they talk about the skills of, what your background should look like and where the camera should be. Honestly, I don't think people care. If the camera were, well, certainly you don't want to look like this, but, if the camera were, if I were too far back or, I have to say, I don't think people care. As a professional speaker, I'm trying to line it up. I've got this gizmo that is in the middle of my screen. It's a plexicam stand, so it gets the camera at eye level. I think those things help. But I was on attended a conference of CEOs a couple months ago, and these guys are running billion-dollar corporations. And if I were to turn your cameras on, I guarantee they would look, their background, their setting would look just like you. They don't have the palm trees and the trophies. So I think there's some technique. I think looking into the lens is key. Certainly want to be on point and, structure your conversation in all the ways that I've talked about today. Hopefully that answers the question.
No, I think that does a great job of answering the question. So thank you, Roger, for your presentation today. Thank you for your additional time in answering a lot of the questions that came in, a lot of great feedback, and thank you, of course, for everyone attending today. Our next webinar in the Build Your Career webinar series is on making conflict work, which will be held on June 22nd. We have the IEEE Computer Society is putting on 4 additional webinars in May. The title for those webinars are Controlling Malaria with Agent-Based Models. For our IEEE members in attendance today, we'll have a webinar on tips to submit a successful senior member grade application. There's a webinar titled Orchestrating Flow on Data Across Big Data Pipelines and Insight on Blockchain. You'll be able to register for all those webinars using the link you'll receive in tomorrow's email with the slides and recording. And as mentioned, we'll include a link to the previous webinars Roger mentioned throughout the presentation. Again, I would like to thank all of you for attending and Roger for sharing his great knowledge and a lot of insights and tips I think we can all use in our day-to-day lives and interactions with people. So thank you again for everyone and have a great rest of your day.